What up, what up? Back at it again. And today I wanted to give you guys a couple more examples when it comes to frailing. We talked about that the other day. And there's a few like really big cultural icons that we've had that have really used this and been an example of this and exemplified this well. So, right now I'm wearing an off-white hoodie. And if you are familiar with Off-White, the brand, you know that the designer, his name is Virgil Abloh, and unfortunately he passed away towards the end of 2021. He had been sick, he passed away. And he was also the designer, or not the designer, but he was I believe, the head of marketing and product development for Louis Vuitton. They hired him onto their basically to give it, a fresh new perspective and everything like that. And the thing that came to mind, so he's an example. If you listen to his story of how he came up, it was like he's from Chicago and he wanted to be a designer. And so he began his, and maybe you've seen these or maybe you haven't. I remember seeing these, actually. I remember seeing people wear this at the time. So back, I think it might have been 2014, 2015, he had these polo flannels, and polo at the time was also a very popular brand, and it was worn by a lot of, it was like street fashion, like people would wear it. It was one of those things that Ralph Lauren over the course of time has been like a classier brand, and it was being adopted more and more by pop culture and like streetwear fashion, and rappers and all these types of people were wearing it. So he would take these flannels and then he would screen print the number 23 and a Pyrex logo, just the words Pyrex. And so to him, what he described this as is that where he came from, which is like the ghetto of Chicago, there would be two paths that you could take toward becoming, living that life, a life of, becoming rich and becoming successful and stuff. And it was either that you were some sort of athlete, like that's what the 23 represented, because that was like Michael Jordan's number, or it was that you were a drug dealer, because the Pyrex pot, whether you've heard of this or not, people refer to it a lot in rap songs, and it's what you make crack cocaine in a Pyrex pot, and that's what that represented. So this got like him some traction and stuff. Eventually he was, I think, sued by Pyrex, or they told him to remove the shit. And then he came up with this more refined off-white logo, and the off-white signifying, in my opinion, is signifying the cocaine. And then, so what I'm getting at with this whole idea is that him and also Andy Warhol, they both use things that were already on the subconscious mind, the collective subconscious mind. People were already into Polo Ralph Lauren. People were already thinking about drug dealers, and that was already something that people could relate to. And he came up with this brand, Off-White. And now, as you can see, this is a reflection of consumer and commercial kind of culture and the materialistic consumer world that we live in. He's got these tags on here, and these tags come on the shoe, and it's a part of the clothing. You'll see people, they wear it and they keep the tag on because the tag is a part of the art. And it was very similar. So what he has done is effectively use something that has already become trendy, and we'll talk about this in a second, how it was already kind of trendy, and use it to his advantage to create something new that is kind of a blend of certain things and is kind of like leaning on this prior success of commercialized art and art that has already been swept up in this. So to bring that point home, now we have somebody like Andy Warhol, and Andy Warhol was kind of, you could look at him as like the forefather of modern day art. Today we have NFTs and all of these things that really like kind of have a foundation. So when Andy Warhol, his story was that he was doing illustrations for different magazines. And he was trying to figure out a way to use what was already successful to his advantage and make his process easier. So he would kind of trace along. He developed a style where he would trace along photographs or already successful kinds of prints, but he had his own style. It was kind of like a dotted line that he would use. And what he saw was that all these people were doing like this artwork for commercials, and they were doing, a Coca-Cola commercial. They were drawing these beautiful illustrations for it. And he saw that as the culture was evolving here in this country at the time, he wanted to incorporate that commercialized America into his art. And that's where you get the Sam Campbell soup cans and the portraits of Marilyn Monroe and the portraits of all of these famous people and successful people and people that were already on the minds of everyone. Again, these were things that were already on the collective subconscious. And so he turned them into art, and it kind of represented America at the time, because it was like these massive things of like Coca-Cola bottles, and it just reflected like the culture that we had here, that we had so much abundance in this country. And he basically turned himself, by aligning himself also with his artwork, he was able to turn himself into this kind of cultural icon. And when we talk about Frailing from Transurfing, this guy, both like Andy Warhol was really killing it at Transurfing. He really, really had a lot of success doing that and doing Frailing, because he would meet these people and he would turn everything to his advantage. He would somehow come out of a situation where he would be the arbiter of and be like somebody. He started charging so much for his prints, right, and for his portraits, and he was able to do that because he created this situation for himself. And like I said, all this modern day art that we see now, these NFTs, which are incorporating these other ideas, people are taking ideas and combining them into something new that is kind of like already bubbling up on the collective consciousness that people are already thinking about. And because you see these crypto punks, right? It's like pixelated art. Now you got other people copying them. Now, how many NFTs do you see that are just portraitures done in that style because that was already successful? And yeah, I wanted to reflect on that. It's like, you can see examples when you see it, when you have this like thinking about this from this perspective of Frailing and how people are able to couch their desires in giving people what they want, what is already maybe on the cusp of culture, or on the cusp of what it is that people are always looking for the next thing. People always want the next thing to be fresh and alive. There's always new trends emerging. Instagram was so popular and it was so polished. People got tired of that. And TikTok now, because it's so much more less polished. It's so much more, here, I'm just going to set this up and do this. It feels more real. And as you start to notice these trends, and as you start to notice people that have success with these, you'll start thinking more in this way, and you can really start to see how people are using this to their advantage. And yeah, Andy Warhol and Virgil Abloh, they're both really kind of examples of like the pinnacle of that, where they were able to really tap in and really utilize. I mean, Andy Warhol or Virgil Abloh, for example, you see all of his Nikes that are off-white Nikes. It's like everyone already likes Nikes. And somehow he was able to insert himself by creating these Nikes that are now like thousands and thousands of dollars. If you're trying to buy, and people are that are shoe collectors, back in the day, people thought it was crazy how much Jordans were selling for. Now, if you want some Jordan 1s or Jordan 4s or whatever that are off-white, they're like over $1,000 guaranteed, or like it's a spectrum. Some of them are more, some of them are less, but it's crazy. It really is cool to see how, and yeah, you might hate on it. A lot of people kind of hate on, I feel like, that whole idea. Like, people hate on Andy Warhol, people hate on NFTs, but there is something to be said about this because it seems, if it's done right, there's something to be said for it. People gravitate toward it. it's something that is relatable. It's like inherently relatable. And in the case of Andy Warhol, I mean, he really was able to make things easier for himself by doing that. And it's like not reinventing the wheel. Anyways, guys, if you guys have any thoughts on this or anything you'd like to add, feel free. I love discussing stuff like this. And I'm trying to think if there was any other points that I wanted to leave off this video with, but I think that pretty much covers it. Just talking about the culture in general and the way that things are now, I guess the last thing that I would leave off with is that we've entered into this time now where the person and the idea almost, and the person, I would say, behind the product has garnered, and I think Andy Warhol is what started this, is that to a degree. Of course, this whole idea started even before that, when you would have these artists and they would have patrons, and the patrons would want to increase the value of the art that they had so that they could increase their overall net worth. And so by the patrons putting a price on the art, they then increased the artist's value, if that makes sense. It's like, say that you had a painting done by Monet. There's other guys that could also emulate that style and do that type of, have that effect in the dotted and whatever. And it might be almost as good or just as good or whatever. That's subjective. But the fact that it was done by Monet and the fact that it had Monet's signature on it, that increased the worth. And it was like, okay, the floor price of a Monet painting is going to be this much. And so that's where this originated from a little bit. But that took on a whole new kind of, it has taken on whole new levels of gratitude, I feel like, with Andy Warhol, because it became like, okay, at the time, if you wanted a portrait from Andy Warhol, which was essentially just going to be a colorful thing, it's like that could have been replicated by a lot of people. He's not the only person that could do that, but Andy Warhol doing it is going to be a minimum of like $25,000, which at the time was a lot more money. And now you have, it's the same kind of concept has to a degree, unfortunately, permeated through art and our culture. So it's now if online, let's say, if you don't have clout, you could be releasing the greatest song. There might be a few audience members. There might be a few people that come to your song. But if you don't have this clout and this kind of appearance of, oh, wow, who is this person? They're like achieving some sort of massive meme-like or virality. A lot of people don't give it that much attention because there is so much stuff out here that people are more likely to gravitate towards somebody that has this kind of Andy Warhol, Virgil, Abloh effect. It's like, oh, who is that guy? Like, people are talking about that guy, and there's so many different people that are posting him, or I've seen him in multiple places. And if you don't have the following, if you don't kind of have the clout, people are not as likely to, unfortunately, and you see this across everything. You see this with the NFTs thing as well. It's like the people that made CryptoPunks and some of these NFTs that are very like, what is it called, Bored Apes, and these kind of high-end NFTs, there's nothing that special about them. Let's be honest. That shit is very pixelated. The CryptoPunks, it's not even that pleasing to look at. And people have made videos about this, and people talk about this. But it's the fact that it is associated with this like higher tier thing. It's very kind of nebulous, but at the same time, it's like the originator, who they are, and the perception of who they are matters more than the art itself. And you could say the same thing with it's like the Nikes. They're essentially the same as the regular Nikes, but it's like they have the tags on them. They have like the little thing that says Air in quotes, and you know that it's made by Off-White, so you know it's made by Virgil Abloh, so you're willing to pay like 10 times the price. Anyways, interesting things to think about, and I will leave you guys off with this without making it too long of a video. But yeah, we'll get into more conversations soon about transurfing and hopefully just relating ideas from our culture and ideas that we can kind of grasp to make it easier to grasp the concepts and relate to them more. Yeah, thanks. I'll see you guys next time.